Tick-tock. If you haven't yet, you better vote fast. So what's at stake? In Massachusetts, it's 133 delegates total, 91 Democrats, 42 Republicans. Overall, more than 1,400 delegates are up for grabs tonight. That's more than 6 times the number of delegates awarded so far. And while it's not enough to put anyone over the top, many argue today could be the tipping point for the two frontrunners. Massachusetts continues to play a big role as well, at least for the Democrats, with both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders making stops here yesterday, and Bill Clinton, after his 11 p.m. event in Worcester last night, accompanying Marty Walsh to the polls in Boston this morning. We'll get deeper into that issue in a few minutes, but first, Emily Rooney and Adam Riley have been out with the voters throughout the day. Adam went to the so-called bellwether community of Waltham. We'll hear from him in just a minute. But first, Emily Rooney's impressions from Brookline.
At Town Hall in Brookline, where registered Democrats packed the rolls, there were few surprises and even fewer people who took Republican ballots.
No substantial uptick for Republicans.
Precinct 4 election warden Jim Slayton says the big question here is whether Bernie Sanders can beat Hillary Clinton.
There is a real politically progressive sense of the voters here in Brookline, and so I would expect it to be a neck-and-neck race and potentially higher on the Sanders side.
And judging from our very unscientific poll, Jim Slayton is right, with Bernie Sanders catching the imagination of a number of Democrats today.
I'm voting for Bernie because it's a vote against Hillary.
I voted for Bernie, but I'll vote for Hillary in the general. Mostly sending a message.
Then again, this part of Brookline may have outliers, but not all are on board.
She's well-seasoned in foreign policy, and her husband did an outstanding job.
Well, I like her. She has more experience. She's more calm.
Meanwhile, this 99-year-old voter refused to break our tie. My colleague, Adam Riley, was also out doing some toe testing. Adam?
Emily, we stopped by Waltham because it's a bellwether, casting votes that came eerily close to statewide totals in 2000, 2008, and 2012. At 2 polling places, we found plenty of Bernie Sanders supporters.
He's got the right message for the middle class. Truly has.
He's been consistent for decades, saying the same things over and over.
Straight talker. I don't know if he's going to win, but I think he's going to put up a good fight.
It doesn't sound political in every way. He sounds so original and authentic.
But we also ran into a fair number of Hillary Clinton backers.
I think she has presence, and I think she has stature, and she has knowledge.
She's the most qualified.
Sanders, on Facebook, you see the majority of the support is for him, but either way, I'm voting Hillary.
The Congress and the House are both controlled by Republicans, so if we have something that are very extreme, it might be hard to actually get things to work.
The only Republican we found who got votes was Donald Trump, and one of his supporters was almost apologetic.
He's rough around the edges, big time, but I think they can mold him into what the people want. But he's just saying what everybody wants to hear. If nobody likes him, impeach him and get him out.
That said, the only sign holder we saw was a Trump guy, too.
A lifelong Democrat, and I changed to unenrolled so that I could vote for Donald Trump.
My big takeaway, if Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz shock the world, they won't be doing it in Waltham.
Adam and Emily join me now, along with David Paleologos, Mr. Bellwether himself, the director of Suffolk University's Political Research Center. Good to see all 3 of you. Can we stay unscientific, to use your word, for a few minutes? Because it's all we can do. Did you get a sense of the last-minute media barrage or the physical presence of both Clintons and Sanders had any impact either on turnout or decision-making?
I think the media barrage from Bernie Sanders has been enormous. Radio, television, the Oscars, everywhere you turned, you know, listening to AM radio, for instance, every other commercial is Bernie, and it's personal and it's local. Hillary Clinton's commercials were national for the most part. These you could really listen to, you know, as a local person.
You know, it's funny you say that. I saw both of them yesterday in action. I saw Clinton at Old South Meeting House and then Bernie Sanders at Milton High School. And he was so much better at playing the local card. She said, you know, when I went to Wellesley back in the day, and he went with this, you know, today, Massachusetts has started revolutions before. I want you to do it again tomorrow night. I think he's a little more crafty.
Does that matter?
I think so. I think the local matters. But, you know,
all
look
politics
at
is local. You're aware of that?
Of course,
I
am aware of that. But, I mean, you know, the last 4 polls have had Hillary Clinton leading by various margins, anywhere from 3 to 11. We're in the middle
But most of them
end.
within the margin of error.
Yeah.
You know, Adam, I want to stay on scientific a minute with you. The two divides we've heard about on the Democratic side pretty much so far have been African Americans for Hillary Clinton, millennials for Bernie Sanders. Again, I know it's anecdotal. Did that seem to hold today or no?
My deeply unscientific answer based on a radically small sample size is no, people are all over the map. I mean, with Democratic voters, liberal voters, I have run into, not just today, but over the course of the campaign, a whole bunch of people who are my mother's age, who are big Bernie Sanders fans. My mother is 77, and plenty of young people who back Hillary Clinton. And same thing with, I mean, I think you saw the racial composition in that Waltham piece. You had people from every background backing both candidates.
Not in Brookline, by the way.
Not in
right down stereotypical lines.
That
The
was
African Americans were for Hillary Clinton, the millennials were for Bernie Sanders. So.
But you were nodding your head affirmatively when Adam was talking, meaning the typical divides from the first four are not going to happen here?
In the aggregate, they will.
What does that mean?
Well, you'll find pockets where it will be counterintuitive. It'll make you wonder, and I'm sure Adam, when he was driving back, was saying, this is nothing like the polling. But in the aggregate, usually the numbers fall out.
You checked with Galvin's office this afternoon. He says in the Globe this morning that there's potential for record turnout, for a primary, but record turnout. Is he still saying that late afternoon?
They sound like they're comfortable with that projection. They're still talking about maybe going from 500,000 to 700,000 people voting on the Republican side and possibly hitting 2 million total voters.
Let's get a little more scientific. We'll talk to you for a second. Why are the numbers so high this round? I mean, I understand on the Democratic side it's closely contested. Right. On the Republican side, every pollster says it's Trump and a landslide. Yeah. Why bother?
Well, because he potentially could make a statement tonight. Voters can make a statement tonight in that this state, Massachusetts, is the state with the largest Trump margin of any state yet.
And you think an average voter is saying to him or herself, I want to give him the biggest margin in America if they're a Trump supporter?
I think so. I mean, in the polling, when we asked whether or not you'd change your mind or if you were fixed, the majority of people who are Trump voters won't change their mind.
Can I take a crack at a humanities type follow-up to David's social science answer, which is much more responsible than mine? Both Trump and Sanders have been thriving because there is this really palpable populist discontent from the far left to the far right. And I think that that's why, if the turnouts, beyond anything we've seen before are close, that's why it's going to be so high. It's
two disruptors, obviously,
really
on different ends of the ideological side. I want one more thing for you. What's causing the divide? What's causing a voter, at least in your surveys and other surveys so far, to pick a Hillary Clinton or to pick Bernie Sanders? Is it what we've heard before, experience on her side, inspiration and hope on his side? Is that what it's about?
The Anti-Wall Street is a great court.
It is big.
It's very big.
And they're overwhelmingly going for Sanders?
Oh, yeah. But on the flip side, the gun control issue, I mean, I've gotten multiple mailers on the comparative mailing piece that Hillary Clinton is putting out on the gun issue.
His weakness early in his career.
Exactly. And if he were to win, that would tip that issue upside down.
You know, we talked about Bill Clinton a couple minutes before. Literally 11 p.m. or later last night in Worcester, which is unbelievable. There was a little bit of an issue about him and Marty Walsh touring polling places today. Which of you wants to start with this?
Well, because I've been paying too much attention to this on Twitter and tweeting about it. He drew a rebuke from Secretary Galvin, who said
Bill Clinton did?
Yes, a gentle rebuke, because as Galvin says, as Galvin explains it, he can go into polling places, but he cannot campaign. And there was some indication, Shira Schoenberg, who's a really good reporter for Mass Live, wrote about, she wrote the pool report for what he was doing at Holy Name in West Roxbury. And the boundary between campaigning and just being Bill Clinton, it's a little porous, and it seemed like he might have stepped over the line.
But he was physically in the voting place, not outside?
But I put the onus on Marty Walsh on this. He should have known better. You don't bring a placard, which is what he is.
You mean a human placard?
Yeah, a human placard into a polling place.
I did get a
you have to be 150 feet from a polling place if you're campaigning.
I got a statement from Marty Walsh's office. It was basically just that he came to, the mayor and President Clinton went to greet poll workers. They were not campaigning. But Bill Clinton is sui generis. We've never seen anyone like him before. He is this walking embodiment of politics.
Well, also, plus the reporting I said today, people I heard today or read today, people coming up to him and saying, I voted for your wife.
Yeah, right.
I did this. If other people overhear
have that conversation.
That's it.
But then the whole question is, if they're saying it to him, is he, is saying thank you,
but not inside the polling place. I had an incident in Brookline where somebody actually was taking care of a blind person, and he said, I want to vote for Hillary. She said, oh, good choice. And this is insane. You're not supposed to.
So even if it's poor form, there's no consequence. I mean, there's maybe a worse to fine or
$10
something.
fine. In my past life, when you would politic, they would say take any buttons or any identifying information, and a lot of times family members could go in, could poll check, could look over the shoulder of poll checkers, as long as we didn't interact with voters. So.
One last thing here. Did you go to Sanders in Milton and you heard Hillary Clinton yesterday in Boston?
Old South Meeting
The
House.
sense one gets from not having been that is Hillary Clinton is all about Trump now, and Bernie Sanders is still about the person he's running against. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think that is fair. I mean, she paid a little attention to him. She took a jab at him for, as she put it, proposing that we would foot the bill for Donald Trump's kids to go to college. I think she called him my esteemed opponent or something like that. But it was almost like she'd forgotten about him. And he really went after her hard. He went after her on the Wall Street contribution issues, the Goldman Sachs speeches, and also on her past support of the Defense of Marriage Act, the toughest hit from him that I've heard on Clinton last night.
So do you have any sense on that 99-year-old? Did she wink when you said Sanders or wink the other eye when you said Clinton?
Her whole voting thing got messed up, and she was just sort of in a queue waiting to get that straightened out. But this is a Russian immigrant. She's 99 years old, born on February 9th, 1917. She'll be 100 next year. She was with, I think it was her son. They've never missed an opportunity to vote.
Absolutely. Last thing, were you surprised when your final numbers came out with this potentially largest divide for Trump between he and his opponents of any state in the country, if it holds? Were you surprised by that, or were you not?
Totally.
Totally. Because of what? I mean, the Republicans themselves in the state, the
members
of the party are pretty conservative.
But it does make sense to me. I mean, you've got Trump, who has taken conservative and progressive opinion, complimenting Planned Parenthood in the last debate, while the other Republican candidates
which gets them some unenrolled.
Which gets some crossover support. And the fact that Cruz isn't going to be in the top 3 tonight. And there's a void that wasn't filled properly by Rubio, and will be filled somewhat by Kasich if a lot of independents, jump into the Republican primary and support him.
Well, thank you three for filling the void, at least here. Emily, Adam, David Paleologos, thanks so much to all.